Allah has said that He Himself protects the Quran. As I said before, when Allah mentioned, He says, وَإِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّ لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. That we are, by my majesty, I have sent down the Quran, and I'm the one to protect it. You don't have the right to protect the Quran. That's why the Quran is protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala today until date, after 1400 years ago. Allah continues to protect the Quran until the Hitatu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to protect His book because He had, in the past, the other books He has sent, like Zabur and Torah and Injil and the rest, some of them were incorporated and corrupted by some of those who would have the selfish desire to deceive the people, manipulate them to their whims and caprices, to decide to twist the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah in His majesty came out and said, no, this will stop by my revelation who comes last from Muhammad. I have to protect the Quran. So He protected the Quran, not by Muhammad, but He sent it to Muhammad to recite it to them, not to put them on a book, but put it in their brain. And they were reciting at the time. They would sit in classes in madrasa and they would recite the Quran. And they will memorize it to the extent that they will never forget it. And some of them who have the Quran by heart, they were called al-fas. And those who have Quran by heart, they have the 30 jais in their heart. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will also grant them the wisdom to protect the Quran. And even at that, despite the battles they fought in the Islamic world, but yet the Quran is protected. That was why in time of Uthman, some of the scholars say that there's a fitna that took place in the Caliphate of Uthman, that to the extent that some of the Qurans were burnt. And these are our noble Christian brothers and sisters who sometimes antagonize the Muslims. They will come and say, oh, your Quran has different interpretations. Though use the word interpretations in the truest sense. But to them, they didn't use the word interpretation, they used the word corrupted. Because they thought that they were having like an Egyptian Quran. He says they call the Hafs, and the other Quran we call the Wash. And they thought that because of the differences in some of the kalima, they said it is word corrupted. At the time the Quran was revealed to Rasul, there was no harakas. No harakas in the Quran. In that, no harakas means there's no Fatiha, no Kasra. It doesn't say it is mentioned like that. It's not Maksud, there's no Doma, there's no Mufatah. So if that, they say the Quran, when they recited it, some of them, when the Quran is passed to them. For example, the earliest Sahabas, they heard the Prophet when he recites it, so they memorized in that pattern. But when they write the Quran at the time, they will not put there's no harakat included. So the Quran was passed to them 100 years later. So from Sahabas to Sahaba to Tabi'in and Tabi'in down to people who were the great scholars, some scholars, jurists, in far distant part of the country of the Arab Peninsula. Some even to Egypt and many other parts. So they could not identify if it is in Doma or it is in Fatih or it is Maftuh or it is what? It is Masub or it is Kesra. So with that, they will recite it based on its word, and they will mistakenly use the word kul instead of qala. Sometimes they will have confusion in those pronunciations. That doesn't mean that the Quran is corrupt. That's why you have the word hassa Qur'ani, you have Qur'ani hassa and Qur'ani wahsh. That doesn't mean that the Quran has been corrupted. It means that based on the interpretation, based on the way they see the word, based on because there was no harta, they could not really recite it briefly. But at the time, they would not, due to advancement in Islamic science, they now decide to include those haraka for the benefit of us who are lesser in knowledge to understand and recite it and teach it. So that is why it is now you find the Quran nowadays having those haraka. But at the time there was no haraka. Now you see that's why sometimes you have different pronunciation. But according to a great scholar, one great scholar by the name of Jalal bin Suyuti, in his very own book Al-Qur'an, he gave some references on that and explained the reason why it's weird. That doesn't mean that the Quran was corrupted. It was protected. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His message is protected. He said, Inna nahnu nazzalna al-Qur'ana Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu la'afidun. We protect the Quran. No one can corrupt the Quran. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And may Allah continue to understand, make us understand the fact that Quran is protected. May Allah give us the understanding to make sure that we should not be among those misguided. And may Allah give us the understanding to protect us also from the hands of Shaitan and the hands of his co-author. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Come again next time to discuss more of issues, relevant issues in Islam. And may Allah guide us all. Ameen.